Hey guys, in this video, we're going to take the project that you have in Lovable and move it over to GitHub so you can then share it with a developer or pull it down locally and continue developing it with IDEs like Cursor, Windsurf, or VS Code. So inevitably, your project's going to get to a point where you want to continue building it, you want to enhance it, you want to build out maybe an API or a database of some kind, or hand it over to a developer to continue building out these features as you get more users and have a proper tech stack structure. So let's get to it. The first thing you would do is get a GitHub account if you don't already have one, if you haven't connected one already. And I'm just going to sign into my account. Okay, I've logged into GitHub. At this point, you don't need to create a repo or anything. Usually when you start a new project in GitHub, you would click your little icon here and choose repository. But in this case, we will do that via Lovable. In here, I will log into Lovable to see my existing projects. But of course, you could start a project if this is the first time you've used Lovable and fill out your MVP details of your features and stuff like that. If you need help with that, I've got a link likely to be in my bio of a product requirements document to help you flesh it out so you can start sort of ahead of the game with more context on who your app serves, what your app solves, and what are the key user stories, features, and of course your database schema, API endpoints, and stuff like that. That's all in my bio. You can grab that for free. And here I'll just continue. I'll log in with my GitHub account. And that just saves a bit of time. You can log in with other alternatives and then connect your GitHub account. But I will just connect straight to my existing GitHub account. All right, so here is a product that I was messing around with earlier. This is a professional product descriptions in 30 seconds for e-commerce brands, and you can see it's a very basic. It comes up with a very basic design out of the box. Most of these tools at the moment, but you can then take that and enhance them with these other tools that I'll be showing at the end of the video. So you just go to, you can have a look, features, pricings, examples, and then it's also got a dashboard page as well that it built. So if I want to take this code and bring it in, you can have a look at the code here by clicking this little code button up here. If you scroll up on my conversation, you can see I gave it a pretty sizable prompt to build this thing, but it doesn't look like it built out the API, just the front end. You've got options to connect Supabase here and a few other things. I'm still not 100% sure if it can do an Express API, like a REST API, but we yet to see whether we can do that, which a full stack app would have that, of course. So if we want to take that now so we can add those features, we want to go connect to GitHub. And then I've already connected my account. Now we just need to connect a project. So I'll go connect a project, add organizations, and then another window opens up, which you can't see, where I just basically select my organization and apply. So now it's going to come back with an OAuth to redirect URL straight to add organizations, and my organization's been added. Go continue, connect. So it looks like so the GitHub repository is now under my account. I can click view here. So if I hit view, it will take me over to GitHub. And here is my Lovable project. It's just called the name that it gave it. Project info has got a URL to the Lovable. It's created a README file on how to use this. So somewhat useful. So let's jump into my code now and see if we can get this running locally. So before I switch over to my IDE, to get the link that you need, you'll need this link here to get started. There's two ways. One is via SSH and one is via HTTPS. I prefer this SSH route, and I'll show you how to get that started. Warning though, this next few steps will be a little bit higher code than what Lovable would be, but to get it set up and running locally should be fairly painless. So let me copy this URL. Okay, so I'm on a Mac. You could do this on a Linux machine or a Windows machine as well. But with Windows, you need to install something called Windows Subsystem Linux, I think it's called, which is WSL. So Google that, install WSL first, learn how to activate WSL, and then you also need to install VS Code. It's free to download. It's a completely free IDE. VS Code natively works with GitHub Copilot. You just need to install the plugin and, of course, have a subscription to GitHub Copilot. But if you prefer to use Windsurf or Cursor, the process is exactly the same. Those are also just forks of VS Code. So you would still need to install WSL and so forth if you haven't done that already. So let's get started. I'm going to open a terminal. There's a shortcut for that, which is Control-Shift-tilde. But you can also do it in the file menu, which probably isn't going to show on my screen because I'm just sharing a window. But now we have the tilde open. We can do this next part. I've got a folder on my hard drive called developer. So I'm going to go CD, which is change. I'll see if I can zoom that in a bit. CD for me. So just a little crash course. So if you want to know what directory you're in, you type in pwd, and I'm in users Roger. And then you can see that users role Roger is also indicated by the tilde, which is the home directory in Linux-based systems, and Mac is based on a Unix system. So developing on this system is way easier than trying to get this working in Windows, just so you know. Just a bit of background. All right, so now let's move to our development directory. So we go change directory, CD to, I've got one called desktop or developer in there. So we want to go to developer. I'm going to make a directory. Okay, dir called Lovable apps. And then we're going to move to that directory, change directory, Lovable apps. And then I'm going to now take the link I copied from before. I'm going to say git clone and then paste the link. And this is that link. And it's going to clone into that, the Descript AI Scribe project. So now we can CD into the Descript AI Scribe project. And here we are. So if we open this up and we can, now we've made that directory, we can make that up too. We've got developer. I'm just opening that folder that I just made, Lovable apps, Descript. Okay, cool. Here we are. Okay, yes, I trust the authors. Now I'm just going to close that, open this, get back to my terminal. Now, to get started with this, you can open the README. It'll open the README in an editable state. But you can push this button and you'll see that the rendered state here, which is exactly how it appears in GitHub. So on the README, it says to run this command now. We've git cloned and then we CD'd to the project, and now we're going to run this. So we've got to make sure our command line is in that area. We go npm. It's telling us just to run npmi. That's what the README generated by Lovable says. So I'm going to run that and see if it works. Yep, looks like it's running. Oh, hang on. No, it's not. It is running cursor. npm. There we go. That's installing. So now this is just installing all the dependencies. All right, 467 packages installed. So we can start the development server with auto reloading an instant preview. So we just go, click this, npm run dev, and it's running. It's running on this local network localhost, and on the network this. So let's have a look here. If I click this link, actually, before I show you that preview, just quickly show you around the directory. So package lock, this is an auto-generated file from that npm I or npm install, and it just all of the packages in there. The package.json defines all of your packages in there, which are all of the UI components and third-party libraries that TypeScript uses to generate. Then we have a post CSS config. This is for your CSS styling, so your nice headings and your fonts and the stylings of your buttons and whatnot. README, of course. Tailwind is also a CSS styling config. There's a few Tailwind options there. Vite is this is a Vite.js project, not a Next.js project, so it's built on Angular as well. I just prefer to use Vite because the build times are super fast, so I keep that as it is. Public folder will be your public resources, so you'll have your favicon, which is just the Lovable logo at the moment, placeholder. So you need to change all of these things. The source directory will contain the actual source code and logic of the app, including the components. So you've got the dashboard components, and you've got the product generator page. We've got all of the individual UI components that get used throughout the project. And it's got these hooks. At the moment, it's just for generating a toast. So a toast is kind of like a small alert that appears in the bottom right. Libs, that's just a utility file. And then it's got the 3 pages that it created. And then the pages themselves are composed of the HTML markup and then all the dynamic scripts that get pulled in to perform specific actions. Let's switch over now to the browser, and we can see the preview. So we can see here it's on localhost. So if I go all right, so here we are in my browser. This is just Chrome. We've got localhost here, localhost 8080, and this is the project set up. None of these buttons are working currently except for the dashboard, and there's just a couple of pages here that you can go through. So that's getting it up and running locally. Now, of course, this is just a skeleton of the project. I would then spend some time with Copilot Agent Mode or Claude Code and start building this out. I'll show you a little bit of that at the end of the video. The other thing I wanted to do was go to the local network address on my phone. So I'll just quickly do that, which is 10.0.4.42.port 8080. Okay, so there we go. That's it running directly from my Mac Mini, broadcast to my local network, so I can access it. So yeah, so that should get you out of a bind. If you need to get your code off, you can then now share that GitHub repository with your developers and assign them to the code and share it to their GitHub account, and then they can access it and develop on it directly and make commits to that. So I wanted to show you, I'll jump one more time, jump back into my IDE, and I'll show you like what developing might look like for you. All right, so we're back in my code. I'm just going to open a new split terminal here. So keep our server running. And say we wanted to modify something. The first thing I would do is create a new file here, and I'm going to use my tool of choice at the moment is Claude Code CLI. So I'm just going to call this file claude.md. I'm going to copy the product requirements document that I previously created for this, not in this video, but it is based on a template that I have freely available. It's a prompt, actually it's more of a framework. It's a prompt that helps you flesh out your idea and then defines the specific detail on how to implement that. So what I'll do is just grab my PRD, open this file, got this empty file here. I'm going to drop it in there, hit save. And so this is kind of the full summary of the PRD. Market analysis, what the goal is for the monthly revenue in a period of time, who are the personas we're targeting, market validation, what are the key assumptions to validate, what are the user stories that we're going to implement for the use cases. We want simple form, basic product details, AI generate. We actually talk about the key AI workloads, the basic payment integration and what the product's going to cost. We're going to talk about the general future features. Now we get into the nitty gritty, which is the technical architecture, the database design. So this has got a users table with all of these fields. This has got usage logs here. We've got a descriptions table. We've got a subscriptions table for payments. And then we also have all of the REST API endpoints for authentication, user profiles. We've got the descriptions endpoint, which is specifically for the product descriptions. So you typically have dedicated business logic endpoints. We've got the payment endpoints, and you could extend that to have organizations and a bunch of stuff. We talk about our stateless API design principles, which is standard practice. Talk about database migrations and how we're going to manage migrations. We talk about mobile first design approach, go-to-market strategy, pricing strategy, analytics, if we're going to implement any of that, development time frame, stuff like that. So I can actually now open Claude in the terminal here. Claude. So let's have a look. And then yes, we do trust the files in this project. Claude Code extension installed. All right. Enter to continue. Now we are officially in Claude. So the first thing we do, I'm going to switch to plan mode. You go shift plan mode and we go take a look at Claude.md and then analyze how much more of the project, analyze what we need to do to finish this project. You can get more specific and say, take a look in the source directory, but most of my apps, when I build them, I actually have a mono repo structure, which is a bit different to what Lovable does. And then I would probably have more than one app. What do I mean by that? I don't mean that my app will have multiple apps. I typically mean that my apps might have API documentation which runs on a separate server or something else that runs. It could be a CMS for managing a blog or something like that. But this alone helps Claude to power through. So if we take a look at what it's actually doing, we don't really need to look at these anymore. What I do, if it's going to let me do it, is move Claude up here. And you don't always need to look at the code. Like, the code structure's here, so you can always open whatever file you want. But it's kind of like the new way of vibe coding. It is a low-code approach, actually. It's just those couple little things you needed to get the code in the place. And now this CLI is now doing it. I could actually completely close VS Code and use the CLI just in a terminal So I have one window and I'm talking to one AI. It's not a nice interface, but it's solving the same problem, but except you can run it on your local machine as some of these other apps are doing. So we'll wait. That's going to take quite a while, and it does a very thorough look at the code base. It's one of the more thorough AI options out there. So it's going to go through, pretty much look at every file and then compare that to the PRD document and tell me probably recommend some tasks to follow in order to complete the project. All right, so yeah, so what's already implemented. And what's missing for MVP completion. So it's saying that, sorry, I'll just go back to here. There we go, yeah. So critical missing features, MVP blockers. So this is the thing, is like you don't know this on the outset when you use other tools on what's actually missing in the project. So because we have a dedicated PRD setup under the Claude.md folder, then it knows exactly what's missing. So here's what's missing. We need to set up a Supabase project with database tables, users, descriptions, usage log, and subscriptions. Implement database schema defined in the PRD. Configure environment variables and API keys so the API can actually integrate with that database. Then we would need to set up the authentication system, implement full user registration, login with Supabase Auth. I do believe Lovable has options for some of these components as well, by the way. Add a JWT token management. So JSON Web Token is when you log in to a platform in the browser, if you look into the dev tools, you'll see that there's an authorization header sent to some location, their API. And in that authorization header, there's something called a JWT token. It would be like bearer JWT token. And that's sent off to an API every time you do a request for information. And then at the API end, it authorizes you to do it. So someone else couldn't do it on your behalf. So that's really important to have. And so someone else can't read your data because they don't have your JWT token. So create the protected routes for the dashboard and also add session management. What else have we got? We've got replace mock generation with real open API Claude calls, implement proper prompt engineering for e-commerce descriptions. So there's probably no prompts or anything already created. Add error handling for API failures and rate limits. Optimize generation time to meet less than 10-second requirement. Payment integration, description management, usage tracking and limits. Secondary features, nice to have. Add see examples functionalities, add loading states for better error handling, deployment and monitoring. So yeah, if you were doing this without the help of AI, it says week 1, build the foundation, week 2, core features, week 3, payments and polish, week 4, testing and launch, ready for production checklist. So I would usually have this conversation for a little while in plan mode and come up with a solid plan. But it can then iteratively go through step by step and implement that plan, starting with the low-hanging fruit or starting with a specific priority order. That would be the way I would approach it. And you could probably knock a lot of this off in a day for a simple app like this. For more advanced apps, it gets a bit more complicated and yeah, it does get a bit more challenging. But there's frameworks in place to help you have the mindset of a developer in this case, because being a developer requires patience, endurance to be able to solve problems. And because the product isn't usable until all the problems are solved, and all this process is doing is identifying the problems and solving them one by one. So you're only a few problems away from getting your MVP launched. You just have to solve them with the help of AI. All right, I hope this video was useful. Talk to you later. Bye.